to our listeners. My name is Emilio Arcon. I'm normally behind the camera, but today I'm actually being the host of this 23rd episode of BEaTS Research Radio. And we all actually live in a kind of unique life experience with the coronavirus. But BEaTS Research Radio is going to continue this transmission with the hope of trying to outreach our communities and spreading the word that we do need science now more than ever. So thank to all the healthcare workers and providers for being in the front line, and also thank you guys. I think there's gonna be a good opportunity for learning a little bit more about science, not only the science we do in the lab, but another type of science today. Today I have with me Dr. Mohammed Al-Khalaf, Mo for us. Dr. Al-Khalaf has a PhD in cerebral molecular medicine from University of Ottawa. He was originally trained at the Concordia University in Montreal, and we have been fortunate enough of having him actually joining the Harvard Institute as a postdoctoral fellow at Dr. Peter's Liu lab. And Mohammed is a wonderful and excellent, expert in cardiac cells and so on. He takes wonderful pictures and also he does wonderful research. But to me, it's I have learned a lot from Mo. And one of the things I learned actually is about the importance of social media for taking science to our communities. And we all are very aware of the power of social media, but PIs like myself, close to my 40s, I wasn't aware of the importance of having and putting science in simple terms for our communities in social media. So today I actually invited Mo to be with us and to tell us a little bit of his career and how he actually became one of these leaders in social media and science diffusion for the community. So thank you so much, Mo, for being here
Thank
today.
you so much, Emilio. I don't know if I'm a leader, but I'm glad to participate and in any way contribute to what we do here and globally to healthcare providers.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I guess of course, this is also a type of communication, science communication that we do here in BEaTS Research Radio. I'm usually the guy asking questions, but today it's a unique episode to talk about the role that social media can play when it comes to science and bringing science to the public.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So could you tell us a little bit more of how actually you transition from being the wet lab guy to also have this different angle of doing science and actually putting science out there for the community in social media?
That's a good way to state it, right? So for a really long time during my PhD, I never had Twitter. I never really used Instagram or Facebook or any of that. I was just a scientist, a young scientist trying to figure out how to do all the biochemistry, molecular biology techniques. And when I started my postdoctoral fellowship, part of the idea of a fellowship, postdoctoral fellowship, is to expand your horizon. And while I did that, moving from my PhD in stem cell research to cardiac research here in the Heart Institute, I also wanted to expand the ways in which I can contribute to science outside of only the research output that we do here. So I think within a year or so of being at the institute, I was glad to see that there are other avenues here in the institute as trainees to contribute to the community, and I wanted to be part of the University of Ottawa Heart Institute trainee committee. So that was my first thought of like, how can I expand on my training and my understanding and my contributions, and being able to participate and join the trainee committee was my way of starting into this path of trying to look at more than just research within the lab, but like research and how it can be part of a community building project. So once I got into the trainee committee as chair of the trainee committee, one of the first things I wanted to do was to actually be able to network with others around the city and around the country. And with that, we decided, me and the nine other members of the trainee committee, to create a Twitter account for the trainee committee. And at that time, I was like, okay, if the committee is going to have a Twitter account, I should finally get a Twitter account myself. And that's how my social media start happened. Is about a year ago with that.
So when it's kind of interesting, you see, because when we normally say networking, scientists and in reality societies is used to the physical networking, right? But in the case of social media, you have a completely different networking, and it can go beyond your the borders of the physical borders of any country. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about networking with someone, I don't know, in India, someone in Asia, someone in in South America, even someone in Alaska, if you want to call it that way.
That's right. So one of the cool things about social media is the ability to be connected to peers that are basically anywhere else in the globe. And we in the science community are aware of collaborations, international collaborations. We for the longest time, it has been, I think, like in our generation, it has been mostly like email based, where you as a PI would email a PI in London or in Brazil or in Wisconsin or whatever, and a collaboration can start emails, and then some teleconference can happen. So the idea of international collaboration, us as scientists, we're used to it, but you know, while these things are still beneficial and we use them all the time, I just I kind of see that now, we have to adapt to the newest versions of communication possible. And social media, while in the beginning was just sort of left to the public and the celebrities and the politicians to use, I started to see how useful it is for scientists to use this. While in the beginning I was so resistant to it, where I'm like, no, no, this is for celebrities and politicians. But once I joined Twitter, immediately I started seeing all these tweets about science content. And some of that science content, like one of the first things that I noticed is how amazing it is to see tweets and content from conferences that I couldn't go to in Europe or in South America or even down in the States or across the street, happening at Carleton or at the university where, and I'm stuck here at the institute. But you're still seeing the data. You're still seeing, especially if the conference allows for live tweeting, you still see information come out. And I'm like, this is definitely useful. And to me, that was the trigger to say, more science communication on social media is definitely, it was already happening, but it was enlightening for me to see how we can actually go into it ourselves.
So in the second section, the second part of this interview, we're gonna see some practical examples with you. But I want to actually start digging a little bit of what was the most challenging things. In my case, when I started with Twitter, it was the length of the tweet. Okay, so in your case, what if you will tell our audience what was the most challenging thing, or what is normally the most challenging things new users to Twitter in the area of science encounter when they start doing this?
That's right. So, of course, one of the most challenging things is just being able to integrate into this ongoing conversation where you feel like in the beginning you're an outsider. You don't have any followers. You don't really know who you're, other than maybe your friend and your colleague and you upstairs and me downstairs, and we can follow each other. It's fine. But then you feel like, how do I engage with others? And there was this social media social phobia, maybe, that it took me a while to sort of understand that this is extremely normal, and everybody on Twitter basically experienced this. Everybody on Twitter experienced with started with the same number of followers and the same number of people that they're following, zero, right? And then like with time I started engaging and replying to some tweets that were very science oriented. So like using my expertise in stem cell and cardiac muscle cell research and like molecular biology, I started feeling more comfort like interacting and engaging with that group of individuals. And you can see how welcoming everybody is, and how if you add an interesting piece of data, if you add an interesting content to the conversation, uh, the people that are part of that conversation will appreciate that you did that, and then you start gaining followers from the fact that you're adding positively to the conversation. And with that, I basically felt the comfort in that. In terms of the how would I say this, the format that Twitter is, I like, it's still a struggle for me to get, like, there is no such, I don't think there is a perfect tweet. I think there are, and I don't think the expectation. I enjoy very much that in social media, typos are fine.
Yeah.
Okay, typos are okay, and people understand that sometimes you're writing something like very quickly, and that is okay if you misspelled, henceforth, or where are you here, or where are you, and as long as the message is comprehensible, it's I see that people are much more forgiving. And I think that this is the way to go when it comes to Twitter, is to sort of just be kind, and be kind to yourself in the beginning, because I know when you put out a tweet that is less than ideal, you're like, oh no, but like, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, I think kindness is the key to having a comfortable social media interaction and social media presence, and that's the start.
So how important is, in your opinion, to tell a story? I think because for me, every time I read a tweet, or actually I'm writing a tweet, I try to actually tell a story, something short from the beginning to the end, and something compelling. Is that really important in Twitter?
I think that is an ideal situation, is if you can give a piece of information that is complete on its own, like a start, a middle, and an end, an introduction, a component, and then a discussion of that component. But it is obviously difficult. I also think that the more you can incorporate images and pictures and videos and links to the data that you're discussing, it can that the importance and the content of that tweet, even though it's only 280 characters or less, you can still pack a lot of content by having this extra video embedded, or picture, or link to some article, or blog that will complement the information that you're trying to say.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, so we're gonna actually take a break now, and when we're back, we're gonna have Mo showing us some and teaching us a little bit of how to tweet for science. so much for being back. So, if you missed the first part of the interview, we are today with Dr. Mohammed Al-Khalaf from the University of Ottawa Harry Institute. Dr. Al-Khalaf is telling us a little bit of what actually the importance of using social media for science. And the first question I have for you in the second section is why this is important for science and how can actually do it better?
That's an excellent question, Emilio. So the idea here is basically, why would scientists go on Twitter? Okay, and the simple answer here is that we want science to be available to the public, and we want to engage with as many scientists as possible to talk about our research and to advance the goals of research. And while our tried and true, do the research and put it out into publication, and the citations and the conversations that come from publishing are great and they've worked so far. There is a way to basically complement that, and some research has actually been done about scientists on research. So recently, about less than 2 years ago, there was a article that was basically titled "Scientists on Twitter: Is it preaching to the choir or singing from the rooftops?" This was done by Isabel Coty and Emily Darling, and I really enjoyed that paper on in the journal Facets, because it shows how typically the conversation that happens is between scientists when we do our publications and we send them out to journals, and the advantage that having scientists on Twitter or social media, but I think the focus is on Twitter, is the ability to engage and outreach with the public, and having more public engagement and more public conversation about the scientific data and the scientific content that we produce can lead to faster reach to policy and decision making. So, the idea is that, as we accumulate as scientists more followers and more active social media accounts, we can amplify our messages. And when we amplify our messages, we can reach outside of just science organizations and other science institutes. We can reach media. We can reach basically the policymakers, the politicians, and that, I think, at the end of the day, is the most important aspect of what we do as science communication, is to be able to contribute to the decision making that affects the public, the healthcare, the science, the innovation, the academia. That's what we want to contribute to, and I see that, like, social media as an accelerator of this type of route, from science, talking to scientists, all the way to, you get to 500 followers, you get to 1,000 followers. Now you're breaking out in of the circles of just scientists, and all the way into the public, and that's kind of why, and that's just one example of many now that are basically telling us that this is the way to go for scientists.
So, in the article you were mentioning about in facets,
Yeah.
so do they have any kind of tips, advices for the scientists who want to actually go into Twitter and start, spreading the word around about how to produce a tweet and what is the key content you have to have in there?
So that's actually really good, because Cote and Darling actually they have a very simple message to give us at the very end, is that with increasing number of followers, scientists can increase the diversity of the community that their science is reaching, and that once you increase the diversity of the community that you're reaching, you can have a greater effect when it comes to decision making, policy making, and their, like, final three word advice to all of us as scientists is, just keep tweeting. You know, just keep tweeting. Don't stop. Don't once a day, twice a day is better than once a week, twice a
All
week.
the way,
Three times a day is better than once a day.
yeah.
But maybe 100 a day is not that great.
It's a little bit too much.
There's only so much science you can distribute in one day.
So, and my understanding is that I was actually witness of this wonderful campaign that you guys put together within the Heart Institute for a really noble cause, that a really important one, that is cardiovascular health in women. And I think that you guys put something fantastic together, and I would like to, as our audience to listen about that experience. You the trainee committees at the University of Ottawa Heart Institute put together, and actually
Yeah,
the straight head of that.
thank you so much, Emilio. Yeah, I this is one of the more amazing things that I was able to take part in with social media. So I had three other collaborators: Amy Johnston, Sol Vidal Almela, who is one of our BEaTS Research Radio teammates, and Dr. Alice Blay. So the four of us wanted to amplify the February 13th Wear Red Canada Day, which was a day to focus on women's heart health during the February Heart Month campaign, long campaign. So for about 2 weeks, Amy, Alice, Sol, and myself were planning this social media project, and we titled it 10 Facts on Why hashtag Her Heart Matters. The hashtag Her Heart Matters is used by the Women's Heart Alliance that is centered here, headquartered here in the Institute. And what we wanted to do is basically, it's almost like a review paper where we actually discuss 10 different aspects of how there is a difference between the data and the treatment that women and men experiencing cardiovascular research have. And there we have different examples, 10 facts to exactly to put out there. And it was really good, so that we planned it so that it takes over the whole day. Each hour, on the hour, one of the facts would come out. I think that there's probably an example showing here of how so we really like tried to plan what is that information, put the reference that fact comes from, so that the scientists can go and actually see the reference, and put a visual cue as well. We added an image, a visual cue for every one of the 10 facts, so that we can create a tweet that is engaging. And I have to say that I was very pleased that I checked the Twitter analytics a few days after February 13th, just to see how things happened. And collectively, we reached an audience of over 100,000 people.
Oh, wow.
In one day, in just 24 hours. So and we just wanted to amplify the message and inform the public about the facts regarding sex differences and the gap in knowledge and treatment between men and women dealing with cardiovascular disease. And honestly, that day, I really think we achieved that goal, and it was a very rewarding experience.
So that you said something, that the need of having also having always having pretty much the actual source, to having a link that is able, if you want to learn more, you go and click in there. And I think that is something quite important to do, and we should, all scientists going in Twitter, we should do that, because it's easy used to spread this fake news or whatever thing.
Yeah,
But science is based on evidence.
exactly,
Evidence
exactly.
without
And this is why I think that, again, there is a way to make this possible on Twitter. You can talk about a fact, a scientific discovery, and you can link the paper to it. You can link Alarcon et al. 2019. You can link Johnston 2019 at Jaha. It's right there in the tweet. You can have a link to it, and you can create a short URL, a tiny URL of clickable, and then it takes you right to the actual paper. So real information can be distributed and those are the tweets that are, high content, high degree of importance, to be able to give to the public.
Oh, wow. Fairly impressive, and congratulations, and thank you so much for doing that initiative with the cardiovascular health in women. It's really important. We need more than that. So now we have discussed about your beginnings in social media, how you are evolved, the involvement with this initiative. But uh, would you have to happen any kind of tips for us, for scientists going on Twitter? And I understand you have two examples in there.
That's yeah. So let's talk about us. Let's talk about BEaTS Research Radio. So the idea here is, what we when Twitter is such a fast news feed, right? So anything that you put out there is immediately walloped by the other thousands of tweets that are basically sent at the exact moment yours is, right? So one of the things that I learned in the time that I've been on Twitter is that you need a visually engaging tweet, so that the individual that is scrolling through their Twitter feed can catch the information. And while I'm not saying that's good for everything, it's definitely good for when you're trying to promote content that maybe requires you to come out of Twitter into something else.
Okay.
So we at BEaTS Radio do YouTube streams, and we do podcasts. And early on, when you were manning by yourself the promotional tweets about the content that is produced here by the radio, one of the things I would say was that it was very, how would I say this, visually monotonous.
Monotonous, yes.
Okay. And the way in which you ordered maybe some of the content was a little bit where you had the tweet or the link to the YouTube channel embedded in the middle of the conversation, in the middle of your tweet.
Yeah.
And you can see that, like, it comes out as pretty stale.
Yeah.
Now the content is amazing, okay? The episode itself is amazing, but to be able to get to it, you want it to be a little, you want it to pop a little more.
Exactly.
So I think more recently, you and I both, and the whole team, we are all reaching version 2.0 of how we tweet about our episodes and our basically streaming and podcasting platforms. So we started adding some more information in the tweet with more visual cues. So when we talk about scientists, or when we talk about bridging, we might put a bridge in there. And when we talk about male versus female, we can put the signs on there. We also want to introduce important hashtags that are used to reach content, so that when we're talking about interdisciplinarity, or when we're talking about early career, we can hashtag early career. When we're talking about science communications like we are today, hashtag SciComm. Of course, today that's going to be in there. And of course, how you put the link, and where you put the link, if you put it towards the end or at the very end of a
You have it there, yeah.
yeah.
What
What ends up happening is that it becomes an embedded video,
Yeah,
and you can see it, and you can click on it,
and you can watch it from there.
and exactly, and
Oh,
you
wow.
can watch it from there. And that's how you can increase, I believe, the engagement and the potential of people to interact with tweets. And I think that's the more we learn, and we're all learning, we can have a more viable social media platform and a social media environment to contribute to.
That's really fantastic, and one of the greatest things of being involved in this project is that I keep learning from the trainees involved, and actually my colleagues. Thank you so much.
And
Mo,
we
for
all
all your help.
we all learned from you, Emilio. I was never on camera before, all right. So thank you so much for the efforts that you put for all of us here.
Thank you so much, Mo, again, and thank you so much to all the listeners. And before we go, I would like to finally thank to all the supporters at for the radio, the Canadian Biomaterials Society, Ottawa Student Chapter, eLife, University of Ottawa Harvard Institute, and also the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Ottawa. And again, all of you guys, catch you next week, and stay safe. Stay home if you can, and I'll see you guys next week.
Hashtag flatten the curve.
BEaTS Radio, scientists interviewing scientists. Canada is a worldwide leader in science and innovation. However, our communities need to be more connected to current scientific research in order to drive the future of scientific innovation. So what steps can we take to more actively engage and connect our community with scientists and vice versa? Innovation and discovery are at the core of the current efforts of our government, but science sometimes gets slightly complicated to understand. At BEaTS Radio, we will tackle this by having young scientists and early career researchers interviewing scientists and innovators. By dissecting science in simple terms, this will allow our community to better understand the importance of science for our country.